And if we think of the availability of food, what's cheaper? What's the cheapest food? It's carbs and fats and sugars and processed foods, right? In fact, people talk about how you don't have enough money to eat healthy, and I think it's a crock of BS, because when you look at what it takes to eat healthy, it's actually quite affordable when you're making your own food. That's the key. So that's partly why we're not getting enough protein. I think there's also maybe a stigma from past studies and misinformation about protein related to kidneys that some people still hold on to, perhaps, which is totally not. There's really no upper limit to protein for the vast majority of people. And then why you want protein is to build and preserve muscle, but it's also prevents the breakdown of muscle mass. It also helps feel fuller. It also burns more calories than carbs and fats when you digest them, right? So there's a lot of great reasons to have protein. The amount is going to be, the evidence tells us 0.7 to 1 grams per pound of body weight is the range I usually use. But it's highly dependent on your activity, your age, and so on. I would say, though, for most people, they're getting like 0.3. They're getting like 0.2, right? They're getting trace amounts. And all you've got to do is say, include protein first in every meal, right? Include protein first in every meal as just a very simple barrier. The second thing a lot of people aren't doing is even tracking their food in any way. So I'm a big advocate of tracking just for the awareness. Even if you're not a tracker, you don't like to track or log food, just do it for awareness. Use a piece of paper. I don't care. Use an app, a piece of paper, and just write it down and try to go online and Google, how many grams are in this size bit of meat or dairy or what have you. And if you do those two things, you're going to be a lot better off. And then if you are an athlete, if you're a strength trainer, or if you're in fat loss, you might need even more, like closer to 1.2 grams per pound.
Yeah, it's my key. It's the macro that it's non-negotiable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And then people will play around with increasing and lowering fat versus carbs, right? The goal is not to have high fat, high carb. That's where you get in trouble. And that's where the processed foods come in, because when you combine the fats and the carbs and the salt, God, it tastes good. And the brain says, I want more. And then there's no protein in there to tell your brain that, okay, I've gotten enough nutrition. So I keep eating. And the great thing about protein, you're never going to binge on a ribeye steak. I mean, I'll have 2 ribeye steaks, but that's a lot, and I can't have that third. But you give me a pint of Ben and Jerry's or 2, I'll finish it, no problem. But it is great at satisfying that hunger. But it also, your body is saying, oh my goodness, I love this to fuel my muscles. And it's stabilizing that blood sugar and making you not hangry and feeling more stable, and sleep is better. But I also want to talk about how can it support the muscles and fat loss at the same time.
Yeah, so you mentioned it should be the anchor macro, and there's a lot of confusion here. So when I'm working with a client or recommending someone who wants to go into fat loss, I'll suggest spending 6 to 8 weeks at maintenance, like trying to find your maintenance calories and eating enough, eating more food, adding in the nutritious things you want, starting with protein, but also high fiber containing foods, nutrient dense foods, and really increasing that food volume. Because while you cannot eat more and lose weight technically calorie wise, you could absolutely eat more food volume wise and lose weight. And that's the key. So if you start there, if you train, if you're walking more, if you're having that kind of active lifestyle first without putting the stressor of fat loss on your body, it's going to make the fat loss a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Then when you go into fat loss, you're right, Sarah, one of the biggest issues is, oh my God, I'm down to 1,600 or 1,500 or maybe 1,200 calories. And you're telling me to eat, 140 grams of protein. That leaves very little for the fats and carbs. That's a true statement. Like, that is a true statement. It's going to look like a low carb diet or even a keto, not keto because keto is high fat, but it's going to look low carb, not because lowering carbs is good for some reason. It's just because you don't have much room for it. So in those cases, having gone through the process first of identifying the leaner meats, the leaner forms of dairy and plant foods, right? The higher nutrient density, air popcorn with salt instead of kettle corn, like all these little choices we can make to still have a flexible, fun diet. Make your pizza at home and double the protein rather than buying your greasy pizza with hardly any protein, right? Like, huge difference in the macro ratio there. And then when you go into fat loss, it is a matter of having the guardrails and the flexibility anchored on protein. Now, some clients might, or some people listening might be so energy starved during fat loss that they're going to have to really have realistic expectations. Do we slow the rate of loss and eat more? Or do we trade off some of that protein and give it to, say, carbs for the energy, or maybe fat for the energy? And that's where I talk about personalization. There's no one right answer. You have to figure it out.
When you take most women who have dieted so much and they're already on such a low calorie diet. I mean, women that are eating 800 to 1,000 calories, they're doing an hour of cardio a day and plus this and that and this and that. There's no room to go. And this thought of you're going to ask me to eat more food and essentially reverse diet, how do you get them over that mental hurdle of trusting you? Because I've been in that mindset where it's like, I know you're talking about someone else. That's not going to work for me, but I've done it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy how the body says, oh, she's giving me more food. I can ramp up that metabolism. I can have more energy. And then the other thing that happens is it's like, okay, I'm a little fidgety because I've got this energy now. So I'm going to go do a little more activity. Whereas if you're on that low calorie restriction mindset, you're going to sit on the couch a little more. You're not going to get up and go do those extra errands that you might if you have been eating a little more and your body says, okay, now I have a higher metabolism.
Yeah, I think you answered the question for me already, but effectively that's the process we have to go through, is raising that metabolism. You mentioned reverse dieting. So I actually use a phrase called recovery dieting, and there's a subtle difference. So reverse dieting would be increasing your calories slowly over time until you find your true maintenance, right? Perfectly good approach for anybody who wants to go through that process. The way I like to do it is faster and a little more precise. And again, that's where like the engineering thing comes into play. If we can track your food and weight very specifically, like on a daily basis, right? Which again, that's not for everyone, but if you hire me, that's what you're going to do. Then we will have the data as we start to average that data within about 2 to 3 weeks to know your true metabolism. And then we can quickly jump there. Like we don't have to reverse diet. We just quickly jump to that point. For some women, it's like too much food, which I love when that's the problem. They're like, I don't know if I could eat this much. I'm like, good. I like that that's the case, because you feel like your body is now normalizing the energy needs versus what you're eating. A lot of women eating the 800, 900 calories and not losing weight, it's because their metabolism's down regulated. And so they're eating like a diet without the results of a diet. How frustrating is that?
It's
Right.
horrible.
So if we can jump up, now the fear is, oh my God, I'm going to jump up and I'm going to gain all the weight back. Well, this is where I have to combine like some of the logical thinking with the emotional thinking. First of all, what caused you to gain the weight in the first place? Probably a couple things. First, your whole lifetime of lack of control, lack of awareness, behaviors. It's fine. I'm not blaming you. It's just what happened, right? And most of us gain weight around the holidays, and it takes time. It's not like it happens instantly. It takes time. However, there are some people that it does happen quickly, like women in the menopause transition. That is a real experience. I've seen it. I'm not going to gaslight anyone about that, where all of a sudden you gain 10 pounds in 6 months. Like, what the hell happened here? And so in either case, I have to apply some logic and say, okay, what we're going to do is get as much data about your body, about your weight, about your body composition, about your biofeedback, and then look at how that correlates with what's happening. And as the scale changes, we're going to talk through each touch point. There's going to be the initial weight bump from fluid, from this, from that, from the other, sodium. There's going to be the weight bump from carbs. There's going to be the fluctuations that occur when you start training from inflammation, right? So we kind of have to logically break it down. And at the end of the day, Sarah, when somebody calls me and says, help, my weight jumped up 3 pounds yesterday, I say, all right, let's take a step back. Let's do the math. How much is a pound of fat? 3,500 calories. How much would you have to overeat to get 3 pounds fatter? You have to eat over 10,000 calories beyond your energy needs right now. Do you think you're doing that? Right. And it's like, okay, I see your point. And it's tough, right? It's tough. But then the next day the weight drops 2 pounds. And they're like, oh, interesting. We don't want to overreact to that either. Be like, yes, my weight dropped 2 pounds. Okay, no, it's all fluid. And the fat changes happen very slowly over time. And that's what we're going to control too.
So with that, and maybe I don't know if you know the answer to this question, if someone's using a body composition scale and they have that 3-pound jump in a day and they've just started doing what you're talking about, how much of that, if it's inflammation or fluid retention, how much of that is going to show up as false fat versus false muscle?
I personally don't like those devices. So I'm just going to lay it out there. there's like a hierarchy of body fat measurement. Like DEXA usually is near the
Right.
top, or research grade. Electrodes where they have 4 electrodes, top of your body, bottom of your body. The BIA devices tend to be more near the bottom. Now, that's not to say that they're useless, because I think if under the same conditions, like, first thing in the morning, you haven't eaten yet, you're in your underwear, like you weigh yourself, over time, the trend can be very helpful. I honestly can't answer the question about the fluid versus muscle, organ, and fat, whether that's going to change falsely more or less than just the inherent falseness of the number to begin with. So my opinion is keep it easy and simple and don't overthink. If you take tape measurements for men, that's neck and waist; for women, that's neck, waist, hips, and then go to Google and type in Navy formula, that's going to give you a close enough approximation of your body fat that you can trend over time and see if you're gaining or losing. That's my approach.
Okay, the neck. That's really interesting.
Yes.
So
Yes.
people gain weight around their neck.
They gain muscle when the neck is larger, and
Okay.
then they lose fat when the waist is smaller, and then women also, hips come into play. It's kind of funny because men don't need to measure their hips for the formula.
I've never even thought about the neck size as
Uh-huh.
in relation to your muscle, but that is
It's very
very
subtle. It's very subtle. It doesn't change very much. Most women I see, like, at most a 1-inch variance in their neck. It's really the waist that makes the difference.